Hi everyone. So this is the back side of the Quadratics quiz review. This is really just questions 9 and 10 here. So this first question, number 9, this one is throwing some people off, even though I know that you had a problem just like that on the homework assignment for 6-3. And I think part of it is the fact that it doesn't show you the original parabola. Okay, it shows you this new one, and it says this is a translation of y equals x squared, but it doesn't show you the original y equals x squared. Well, you should know that y equals x squared is always going to start at 0, 0, right? And so the original y equals x squared would be like here. So when I say what translation, I'm asking what translation would I need to move from this guy over to this guy, okay? And this is how we write translations. We always write it with a t, and then we give like coordinates. We say how far to the left or right and how far up or down. So on this one, we move 3 to the right, and 0 up and down. So it would just be t and then 3 comma 0. Okay, that's the format that you would put your answer in for the translation. Now, this says, or this really gives us your h and your k. Okay, because that 3 comma 0 is really telling you where the vertex of the parabola is. So in the next question where it says rewrite it in vertex form, I do need to remember what vertex form looks like. Y minus k equals a times x minus h squared. I can now plug in my h and my k, and then also my a value. We'll talk about our a value when we get there. But so we have h and k here. So this is going to look like this. Y minus my k value is 0 equals, now that a value would have shown up in my original parabola. In this one, my original parabola is just y equals x squared. My a value here is just a 1, okay? So in my parabola, I'm going to go ahead and write in a 1, but you wouldn't really have to, just like you wouldn't actually have to write that 0 either. But just wanted you to know that that's where it would come from. So if my original parabola was like a 5x squared or a negative 2x squared or something like that, that's what would go in front of the parentheses there. And then x minus h, well, my h is 3, so I would say x minus 3 squared. So I put some stuff in here that you wouldn't normally need to write, like the 0 and the 1. So really my answer could be as simple as this. X minus 3 squared. Okay? So then in part C, when it says rewrite in standard form, that really just means to simplify. That was the new stuff we did in class today. And so I just want to take this and simplify it as much as I can, okay? So the first thing I would do is FOIL out the x minus 3, and let's see, I'm going to have to find some space. I guess I'll go up here. Y equals x minus 3 squared. So I would go x minus 3 times x minus 3. Okay. That's going to give me x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And then negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Combine these guys in the middle, so y equals x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now, the one thing I don't actually like about this quiz review is they made this problem too easy for you, okay? Remember back here when we were talking about this vertex form, this ends up being a 1 and this ends up being a 0, and so neither one of those, you don't really have to do anything with them. I just want to point out that had there been a number here for a other than 1, I would have then wrapped this guy back in parentheses and taken my a value and distributed, okay? But I didn't have that in this problem. And then also, had I had a number over here with y, I would have had to either add or subtract it from the other side, meaning you would have had another number kind of hanging out here that you would have eventually combined with the 9. This was a very convenient problem in that the only thing I had to do was the FOIL. But it's just going to look like this, x squared minus 6x plus 9. I think once you get that ball rolling in the right direction, you're probably okay on that one. But it's just a matter of knowing that to go from vertex to standard, you're really just simplifying. You're foiling, you're distributing, you're moving things from one side to the other, that kind of thing. Okay? Okay. Number 10, consider this parabola. So I'm going to just write vertex form up above here so that we remember what's what. Okay, so when I want my vertex of the parabola, my vertex is always h and then k. So my h value here, if I look at this corresponds pretty nicely. My h value is just a 2. And my k value, if that's a +1 and it's really supposed to be a minus, I know that my k value is actually a -1. Make sure that when you're pulling things out of the equation, it's going to be the opposite of what it looks like in the equation. Okay? Axis of symmetry is always just x equals this first number from the vertex, so x equals 2. Simple as that. Okay, that's all I have to know for axis of symmetry. C and D, these are both based on the A value. Okay, so for us that's 2. That 2 means that my parabola opens up, and that's because A is positive. Okay. And is it wider or skinnier? Well, this means that it's growing twice as fast as a normal parabola, so it's going to look skinnier. Okay, and that's because A is bigger than 1. Okay, so the positive negative tells you up and down. The bigger than 1 or less than 1 tells you wide or skinny. Okay, and then it says to graph, but we've now moved away from just doing a rough sketch, and I want like an actual nice graph. And so what I'm going to have to do is put this in my calculator. Sorry for the shaky camera here. I'm trying to just recenter here. Okay, so I'm going to put this equation in my calculator. Now the ones you've done so far in your calculator have all already been simplified to standard form. They don't have to be in standard form to put them in your calculator. You can put them in like this. The only thing you do have to watch out for is you have to have y by itself. So I'm going to have to move that +1 out of the way. I'm going to just subtract it from the other side though. And we kind of talked about this, that you're allowed to do that. So what I'm actually going to put into my calculator is this. And you're going to see me do it in just a second. Y equals 2 times x minus 2 squared. And then just don't forget to take that +1 and tack it onto the end as a -1. Because to move it from one side to the other, I would go -1, -1. Okay? So in my calculator, without a glare, hopefully, I'll type it in first and then move it back so you can see it. So 2 and then x minus 2 squared and then -1 outside of the parentheses. So this is what that should look like. Okay? I usually like to hit graph and get a picture of it first in my mind just to know what it's going to look like. And then to actually get those points onto my graph, I'm going to look at the table. And I'm going to just find some numbers that look nice. Now it looks like if I go up further, those numbers are getting pretty big. Down here, it looks like my numbers are getting kind of big. So I want to shoot for like right there in the center. I've got like 5 that are going to work out really nicely. So my first one is 0,7. Okay. Next one is 1, 1. Next one is 2, -1. And then I'm back at 3, 1, and 4, 7. I keep losing my line here. 4, 7, right there. I usually like to look back at my picture as I'm drawing it just to make sure that everything is kind of falling into place where it should. But that's what that parabola would look like with exact points. But I should be able to see some specific dots on there. I don't have a set number in mind. You do want to make sure that you get the vertex if possible and then a couple of points on either side. So I would say shoot for at least 3 exact points, but I don't have a number in mind. I do just want to see that your parabola is specifically located in the right spot. Okay, that's really it. So hopefully this video cleared up some of your misconceptions. If there are things you're still struggling on or you want to see another example of, you can ask at the beginning of class tomorrow before we take our quiz.